Hey guys, what's up? Thanks for listening. I'm Joe Labriola.
And I'm Matt Wagner.
And you guys are listening to A Matter of Life in Maiden, the podcast of the Beast. Today is the first episode that Matt and I have decided to record the podcast. Something we've been talking about for a long time.
Yeah, at least 2 weeks.
2 weeks, yeah, 2 weeks. A really long time. But we've been fans of Maiden for a long time. And that's kind of what we want to talk about in this week's episode, this introductory episode about the podcast. Just talk about that a little bit, and talk about, why we're so passionate about Maiden, what kind of got us into Maiden, how long we've been listening, just some background stuff about Matt and I and our passion about the band and the songs and their music and just them in general as people. So here we are. Matt, you can start if you'd like.
Yeah, I figured we just start at the beginning. The first time I ever remember hearing an Iron Maiden song, it was probably about 2003 maybe. I was in high school and I heard a song on the radio by Dio. It was Holy Diver, and I didn't know who sung it at the time. And I really liked the song, so I went searching on Napster at the time, I guess. Back in the day, everybody downloaded songs off of Napster.
Good old Napster, yeah.
And I typed in, I didn't even know the name of the song, so I was just looking up like all kinds of song titles, trying to find it, and I found an Iron Maiden song that came up as related to Holy Diver. And that was the first time I ever listened to Iron Maiden. I think it was The Trooper. It's the first song I ever listened to.
A classic.
Still one of my favorites to this day, top 5. I owe it to Dio that Iron Maiden became my favorite band.
May he rest in peace.
It's kind of ironic that, it's one of Bruce's biggest influences was Ronnie James Dio on his vocals, and that's who kind of got me into Iron Maiden. And from there, it was just like, after I heard The Trooper, I wanted to hear more and more. So I downloaded everything by Iron Maiden I could find. And back then, you just downloaded it by songs. Like, you didn't download albums. You just had a phone modem. It took me like 20 minutes to download a song. And I couldn't get enough. By the time I downloaded one song, I wanted another one. But, I listened to them for a couple months, getting more and more into them. And I introduced it to Joe, who had been my best friend since we were 5 years old.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I don't know, you remember first time you heard it?
Yeah. I was just gonna, touch on what you said there about you introducing it to me. Matt kind of just hit the nail on the head there. He's the one who introduced me to Maiden, and I remember it was probably a year or so after Matt listened to them, maybe 6 months. I might have got a glimpse of them 6 months after he started listening.
I think it was after high school. I think we're out of high school.
Yeah, I think that was probably around 2004, 2005, somewhere around there that I really got into them. I remember. Matt and I were just talking about it a couple of days ago. I had these T-shirts I bought. I got a Run to the Hills T-shirt and a Peace of Mind T-shirt at Hot Topic in like 2004, 2005, somewhere around there, and I still have them today. I still wear them around. I mean, I can never get rid of them. But the one manager at Toys R Us, I was working there at the time, and he said, "Oh, you like Iron Maiden?" And I was like, "Yeah, they're pretty cool." And we talked about some songs, but back then I wasn't really. By that time, Matt was pretty, like he said, had downloaded a lot of stuff, and he pretty much had, he was pretty much, hooked on them, and I was just kind of getting into them.
You like the punk music of the time,
exactly.
Blink-182, that kind of stuff, which I didn't personally like at all, so I was trying to get you, to listen to, what I liked at the time.
Exactly, and I think Matt and I come from a really similar background too. We both used to listen to classic rock. That was something that my dad listened to. My dad kind of introduced me to that.
Yeah, my sister introduced me. So we both love Led Zeppelin.
Exactly.
We love Pink Floyd.
And even 80s bands, we're talking about Van Halen, Black Sabbath, even older stuff like the Beatles, Hendrix, that kind of stuff. My dad was more of a pop kind of rock guy, but he did listen to that old stuff too. He listened to Bad Company. He listened to
yeah, he's make fun of him for
Journey,
to Bad
yeah,
Company.
Stuff like that. But Steve Perry, if you think about it, Steve Perry's vocals and stuff, they're good. So everybody's unique, everybody's different. Queen, my dad liked Queen, so
well, I would say that classic rock is a nice bridge to what Maiden did. It was kind of that post classic rock era where you like Maiden did have influences, and Led Zeppelin. Everybody was influenced by Led Zeppelin in the rock scene, and Pink Floyd and Queen. Queen, I could definitely hear Queen in some of early Maiden stuff. Obviously, Black Sabbath influenced every metal band.
Yeah.
And it's kind of funny to think about Iron Maiden being kind of like, at the time they thought they were kind of this new wave of heavy metal, and now they kind of defined what we even believe heavy metal is. We don't really think of Queen as a heavy metal band, or AC/DC as heavy metal, but at the time they kind of were quintessential heavy metal bands. And Maiden completely, them and Priest, Judas Priest, completely switched what people thought of heavy metal.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. And like you said earlier about me, even if you listen to some early Maiden stuff with Deano, you're talking about like that punk influence that kind of I had in my high school years, in my later teens. I think when I listened to, early Maiden, like the Iron Maiden album and Killers, I get that punky vibe too, and you kind of transition to it because, music, when you're listening to music in general, you pick up on certain sounds and beats that make you feel a certain way, and I think that kind of melded together. Really with everything with Maiden. Eddie is a big influence too. I mean, I'm a big art person. I like art, so seeing that character on like all the album sleeves when you start getting into the music and you start listening to more songs. So like Matt said earlier, I listen to Peace of Mind stuff a lot. Flight of Icarus, I think, was the first song he ever played for me. I loved it.
Yeah, I think that and Wicker Man were kind of like my introduction songs to you, because they were kind of more poppy. They were easier to wrap your head around, Yep. You can't play like Rhyme of the Ancient Mariner, the first song you ever heard of them.
Yeah. And you bring up a good point, too, because when I first started downloading music, like Matt said, it would take, like, you would do one song at a time. So, like, I'd listen to a song and I'd like it. And then I started eventually getting to the point where I downloaded discography. And I remember listening to Power Slave for the first time, and I loved Aces High. I loved 2 Minutes. I loved Power Slave, the song. I loved, all the other songs. And Rhyme, I would always skip. I would always skip Rhyme of the Ancient Mariner because I was like 13-some minutes, like, I'm not listening to the song. But now it's like my favorite song because I'm so passionate about the band, and like they honestly revolutionized the way I see things, not just in music, but I mean in the world. And I think another component that I think we should touch on too is Matt and I have been playing guitar together for a long time too, and that's something he kind of also influenced me to do. With him influencing me and playing with like us playing guitar and jamming and stuff together and listening to Maiden, it was kind of like this just transition of stuff that I went. I mean, I went from straight to listening to punk like constantly just to Maiden. It became like almost an obsession. It still is to this day.
Yeah, like cured you of punk by Iron Maiden cured you of punk.
Now, I mean, don't get me wrong. I'd still listen to that music, but if I was to sit here and say that was my favorite genre, I would have to disagree. It's just the feel of the music, the sound of the music, what they talk about, the subject matter, the kind of people they are. And the fact that they stay true to the music, they stay true to themselves, but they also stay true to the fans. And me as a fan, I mean, I feel like they appreciate me when I go to a show. And I know that, and when I listen to a new album. I mean, Matt and I, since we started listening to them, the only couple albums that have come out since we've listened to them have been A Matter of Life and Death, The Final Frontier, and The Book of Souls. So really only 3 albums have come out, new albums, new material since we've been fans. But in those 3 albums, I mean, I can listen to them and just feel like, they know what I want, like, as a fan. So I think that's a really redeeming quality that they have, and it kind of, like, resonates with not just me, but, I mean, their fan base has grown substantially. I mean, they've even said themselves, when they look out in the audience, the people they see now aren't, 50 and 60 years old. There's, like, 20, 30, 40-years-olds out there. So that's something to say about the band and its authenticity, I think.
Well, I also feel like, as I've matured, the Iron Maiden, the music, their albums have matured as well. That if you look at in the 80s stuff, you're singing about like The Trooper to the Wars, you're singing Flight of Icarus. It's kind of like what a teenager would find interesting, and your average normal male teenager would find interesting. And nowadays, with the last 4 or 5 albums, since the reunion, the subject matter has matured as well. That, like, when they do sing about war or talk about war, it's in a more mature way. And though I still love The Trooper, and it brings me back to being 18, 19 years old when I do hear it, that I do like listening to Passchendaele. And I like listening to, These Colors Don't Run. Matter of Life and Death, the album is, as we named the podcast after, is, had such a big influence on me when it came out. Mm-hmm. The lyrics, the music, everything had such depth and meaning to it. You don't get that out of every band.
Yeah, I think you touched on a good point too. The reason we talk about the podcast now, A Matter of Life and Death was the first album that came out since Matt and I have been fans, and like he just said, I mean the amount of times I listened to that, I had a cassette deck in my car. I didn't have a CD. I recorded the album on a cassette deck. I actually played the entire album off of my computer in the background while I recorded it on a tape, and I listened to it so much. I mean, I wore that tape out constantly. It was just an incredible album. And another thing I want to bring up, just some background info about me and Matt. He can talk about it as well. We're both. He just talked about the wars and all that kind of stuff. We're both history graduates. We both have bachelor's degrees in history, and we're passionate about that stuff. So for us as people and as historians, that kind of stuff resonates with us. The songs about the wars, and Maiden has done that on every album, like he said, and they become more progressive. I mean, and that's another thing about them that's, I think, is unique, that they touch on things that happen in history, and I think that's important, and that's I know that's why I'm drawn to them to a certain extent.
Yeah, that's obviously a huge subject matter for them, is history and what it means to us as modern, people, and what we take from it. And would you say you were influenced by Maiden to like history, or do you think that was always in you? Do you think it was kind of a mutual attraction?
I think it was a mutual attraction, I'd have to say, if I had to be completely honest, because, you've known me for 25, 26 years now. We've been friends for a long time. Growing up, you and I were always kind of into that kind of stuff. I like mythology. I was a big mythology person. In terms of history, per se, I wasn't really into history. I liked World War II. That was pretty much it. I really didn't care for too much other stuff. I liked World War II. Mythology, Greek myth, Norse mythology, all that kind of stuff was really what I was attracted to. And like you said, I think listening to them subconsciously, maybe to a point, kind of influenced my passion to actually want to be more interested in history. So I think it's part of it was in me. Listening to them helped me evolve, not only, and that's kind of what I touched on earlier. It helped me evolve into the person I am today. I think it's a melding of the music, the stuff I was passionate before, my studies. I mean, they have songs that are things that I'm passionate about. I wrote my, capstone project for undergrad studies on Alexander the Great. They have a song called Alexander the Great, and honestly, I listened to that song like every day when I was writing that capstone, because I just, the historical detail and just stuff that they talk about and they're passionate about is what I'm passionate about. It makes me feel like I'm a member of the band. Even though I'm a fan, I feel like I'm a member of the band. Like they talk about things that I would do. If I was in Iron Maiden, I would write those songs. And it's just pretty
yeah, that relationship they have with the fans is not... I'm like trying to think of another band that has that kind of relationship with their fans, and I guess like one that would come the closest would be Kiss. But with Kiss, it's very... their music is kind of shallow. Their quality of music isn't very good. Now, their live show is great, and their fans are passionate. Like, Kiss fans will buy everything Kiss. But the Kiss band themselves fall way short of what Iron Maiden produces.
Yeah, I agree with you. In terms of production, I would sit here and I could tell you that I don't know Steve Harris personally. I don't know Bruce Dickinson personally. I don't know Yannick Gears personally. I don't know Adrian. I don't know Dave. I don't know Nico personally. But I could sit here and tell you that all those guys are learned people. I know that Steve loves history. I know he loves to write that stuff because that's what he does. He reads the stuff and he writes it because he's passionate about it. I mean, if I was a band member and I was going to write about history, I'd write things I was passionate about. Bruce loves airplanes. He loves flying. He loves history as much as... I mean, these guys are educated people who love what they do.
Yeah, I guess when they play, they're not characters.
Yeah, they don't
like Kisses. Kiss. They go on stage. They're kind of characters.
Mm-hmm.
When Maiden goes on stage or they write songs. They do take their personality and they blow it up, but that's who they are, and that definitely comes across in their music.
Exactly. And there's so much that they've done. They really know how to connect with fans from a diverse array of spectrums. I mean, the thing that is so great about them is they stick to their guns. They never, like I said before, alter or change for anybody, and they're still able to churn out new stuff over and over again. That's excellent. I mean, since the reunion, you're talking about they're just learned people. They sing about history. They sing about outer space. They sing about philosophy. They sing about, like Matt said, war. They sing about politics, everyday life. They sing about everything. It's almost a surreal experience not only to listen to their music, but like I had mentioned earlier, just to feel like you're part of the band. I mean, it's surreal. Like when you go to a show, Matt and I have been, not only are we fans, I mean, I know there's some fans who have never been to Maiden shows, like that sucks for those guys. Like I hope they get to go to a show sometime, but Matt and I have been fortunate too to see a lot of shows. I think I just came up this past year. They were touring Book of Souls. Matt and I are from Pennsylvania. That's where we grew up, Altoona, PA. 2 hours east of Pittsburgh. That's where we're from. Lived here our whole lives, and we've seen them, on the East Coast multiple times. My sixth show was just this past year, 2017, when they were touring for the Book of Souls. They played in Washington, D.C. Amazing show. Matt saw them one more time than I have 7 times. You just feel it. I mean, it's just...
Yeah, we're fortunate to have seen them as many times as we have, because you have fans in like Australia or South America. They might not get to see them as much, but then you have the European fans that have probably gotten to see them more than we have, but definitely appreciative of every time we have seen them. But that's another topic in itself, is their live show, which is, I think, as big a factor in why people are Maiden fans as anything else.
And that goes back to the diversity too, man. I mean, it's just every show that I've seen has never been the same. I mean, every tour that they do is completely different. They're the same people, like Matt said. I mean, they're authentic about it, but the things that they do and the stuff that they present is just, it takes you to a different world. It's almost like reading a book. Like you read a book that you want to pick up and it's your favorite book and it takes you to this escape. I mean, their live show, not only does their music do that, like when you listen to it in general, but when you go to a live show, I mean, you're in a completely different world. I mean, Matt and I have talked about several times when they come out, and like when we went, the first show I saw them on was somewhere back in time in 2008 when they played in the Izod Arena in New York City. The first song that came out, the Churchill speech, the intro, Aces High comes out. I mean, it's the first time I'm seeing Iron Maiden ever. I never thought I would ever see Iron Maiden ever in my lifetime. At this point, I've only been a fan for maybe 4 or 5 years. They come out, and I mean, Matt and I can't even look at each other. I mean, we're in awe. I didn't say one word, or I don't think I even blinked or breathed at all until Aces High was over, and I was like, wow, like this is insane.
Yeah, so, I remember that. They played Aces High, and then they went into 2 minutes to midnight, and I think it was the third song, Revelations.
I think Revelations was 3.
I know. So. By the time, I'm even thinking about it, I don't even, it's hard for me to even remember Aces High 2 minutes to midnight. I was so just encapsulated by, what was going on. The feelings, I mean, the energy, it was really overwhelming. And then from, Revelations on, I enjoyed the show more, but, that feeling when just seeing them just hearing those songs that you never thought you would hear, seeing that show that you never thought it would, because that tour was 20 years before when we saw them. We weren't even born when the Power Slave tour originally went through, and then just to see that show and production just blown up and evolved, it was an amazing concert.
It was, and
to this day, it's still the best concert I've ever been to.
Oh, hands down. And Bruce said it, when they released the DVD sometime after, we wanted to give our fans nowadays, these 20, 30, 40-year-olds who are seeing in the audience their own Live After Death show. Before I went and saw Somewhere Back in Time, the show, I was so stoked. Power Slave became my favorite album at this point in time. And now I was listening to Rime of the Ancient Mariner. It was like my favorite song at this point in time. I listened to the album constantly. They released a Live After Death DVD right before the Somewhere Back in Time tour in the United States here when we saw them. And I watched that DVD constantly. And I watched Rime of the Ancient Mariner. I can't even remember. I mean, I can't even 25, 30 times maybe just to get prepared for the show because Matt had like, oh, we're getting tickets, we're going. And I was just so stoked. And at that point in time, Rime of the Ancient Mariner became my favorite song. And I mean, then seeing it live, and we saw it twice. We saw it at the Izod Arena in New York, and then we saw it again at the Blossom Music Center in Ohio.
How many months later was it? It was like 5 or 6 months later. Maybe?
Yeah, we saw them in March, Izod Arena, and then we saw them in June, I think. It was like 3 months later.
Because when we saw them the first time in New York, that was part of their like tour around the world. They hit like a bunch of shows in like a couple months. Like it was like 30 shows in 2 months, or like on all these different continents. They went to like Japan and India, and I think they started in India.
Mumbai.
Yeah, and they went to South America, and we saw them in New York, which I think they only did 2 shows in America. Maybe they did New York, and I think they did LA. So that's when we first saw them, and then Joe was talking about Rime of the Ancient Mariner, and they ended up putting that song onto the DVD, which was by far the best song on the DVD, the best part of that whole DVD anyway. And then for us to have been there, to see that, witness it, and now we get to relive it every time we watch that DVD.
Yeah, I mean, you watch that song, you're like, we were there. I mean, we were there. It's great. I mean, it's that, like you just said. I mean, you said earlier, hands down is the best. And like you said, there's so much. I mean, this is an introductory podcast, and we're talking about stuff here, but we could go on. I mean, I could sit here for days and just talk about how much the band means to me, how much they've, Well,
it's kind of like how we kind of got this idea of this podcast is that every time we'd get together, we'd discuss Iron Maiden for hours and hours and hours. And we figured, why not
record our discussions?
Yeah. Just structure it and record our discussions that we had. And maybe somebody else would want to listen to it, maybe not, but we'd have fun doing it anyway. And it's a nice segue to like talk about what we want to do with this podcast and what we've been discussing. And it's kind of organic, maybe it'll change. But I think what we want to do is start out talking about the albums and what we like about the albums, and doing kind of like a review of all the albums, which would be a nice way to kick off the podcast. And I think every Iron Maiden fan is passionate about albums. That's one of the things that people really enjoy with Maiden, is discussing albums, why they like an album, why they don't like an album.
Mm-hmm. And everybody has a favorite album too. I mean, most people we talk to say they have. Some people don't. Some people, I mean, I used to be one of the guys who was like, "Oh, my favorite album's this or my favorite album's that," and now it's like I have several favorite albums. But I mean, if you're like that, cool. If not, and that's what Matt said. I mean, we're here to talk about our opinions, whether you agree with them or whether you don't, whether you listen or whether you don't. I mean, it's fine. We hope you listen. We hope you check us out, and if you agree with us, cool. If not, if this gets uploaded wherever it goes, I'm sure there'll be a comment section somewhere. I'm sure you'll be able to say something. If you disagree, tell us why. If you agree, tell us why. We want to hear people's input. We want other people to maybe be a part of this too. We don't want to exclude anybody. If you like, if Virtual 11 is your favorite album, I mean, cool. I mean, like, it's not. I'm going to be honest. It's not my favorite. But if it's yours, cool. Talk about it. Tell us why. Tell us why you like the album. Tell us why. If we get to that point eventually where we rank Virtual 11 and it's not up to your standards according to you, tell us why. Tell us what you think, and maybe we'll see it a different way. But I mean, this is just him and I's perspective. We've been friends for a long time. We grew up with Maiden.
Yeah, it was just when I watch YouTube videos of even the modern day, like we were talking about the Legacy of the Beast tour, and we were watching YouTube videos of the show, and you go down and look in the comment section, and every time there's somebody down there that's like Clyburn, was a better
Best
drummer
than
than
Nico McBrain.
I can't believe Nico's in the band. And this is from like 30 years ago. And people are still talking about they should have never replaced Clive. And that's like thing about Maiden fans, they're very opinionated. It's a valid opinion to have. I don't agree with it personally. But if you're saying that, Nico's drumming ruined the band, and that's your opinion, tell us why. We'd have a discourse with it, but you'll always find those Maiden fans passionate about a certain part about the history of the band.
Yeah, I agree, and I think that, like Matt just said, we're not here to, chastise people for liking certain things. We're not here to alter your opinions in any way whatsoever. If you do alter your opinion because you listen to what we say, all right, I mean, cool, that's cool influence. But
I remember seeing on forums old time Maiden fans that have went to like the Killers tour and stuff. They still like Paul Di'Anno. I think they're still bitter at Bruce Dickinson for joining the band, and it's amazing how passionate the fans are about that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I agree, and I think that we've talked about this before. It's kind of like when you grew up, what time when you were born. I mean, Matt and I were both born in '86.
Yeah, we're kind of like near like the middle age of probably the average age of an Iron Maiden fan, maybe, because maybe there's a lot of fans that are teenagers and younger than us, and then there's fans that are 50, 60 years old that were following the band since their inception. We're pretty close to in the middle.
Yep. And I would say with that too is the thing that I'm fortunate about personally. I mean, being born in '86, in terms of being a Maiden fan, is that I'm sure Matt can relate to this. We've seen the band because we've looked back in hindsight because we've seen them evolve throughout time. So we're not going to have nostalgic moments of Killers or Iron Maiden because we weren't even born. We're not going to be at those shows. Like I said, we didn't become fans until 2003, 2004. So at that time, you're thinking about Dance of Death coming out, A Matter of Life and Death on the way. We've seen all phases of the bands. We've seen them in the early days, just by going back and looking at their music or looking at their sleeves or looking at the past history. As historians, that's what we do too. I mean, we look at the past to see how far it's come and the history of the band. So
that's just our perspective. Yeah. Man, we came in the middle of their popularity. This is our perspective. Then you have the older fans. Maybe they don't like the newer music as much, but we came in, like I said, our first album that came out when we were big fans was A Matter of Life and Death, and we'll always have a connection to that album. Like somebody when maybe their first album was Peace of Mind, and they always had a connection to that album. Mm-hmm. That's our perspective of the band, and that's where we came from. Some people have their opinions about Janik. And some people don't think he's a real member of the band. Like, people are very opinionated about that. But we were already, we became fans when Janik was a member of the band, so we have a different perspective on that. Mm-hmm. Like, people out there have their own perspective, and they can share that too. It's fine.
I think that's it. I think we're. I pretty much said everything I wanted to do in the introductory phase here. I think that. If there's anything you want to add, Matt, feel free.
No, that's fine. I think we just wanted to get out there, lay down on the table what we're coming from, what we wanted to do with the podcast, why we're recording the podcast, why we like Maiden. It's hopefully this leads to something where we can record our thoughts on Maiden and people can join in and listen and enjoy and have a discussion with us. That'd be great.
Yeah, we'll have more to come. Hopefully next time Matt and I have some kinks ironed out of the way this is going technologically, the way it's going. I'm sure that this isn't the smoothest podcast anyone's ever listened to. I'm sure there's probably some hiccups in here.
Yeah, we're podcast virgins.
Yeah, this is our first time, so
be gentle.
Be honest, we're still going, so we're lasting a pretty long time here.
Hopefully in a couple of years we look back on this and laugh while we're like having a podcast with the members of Maiden. That'd be awesome.
That would be cool. That'd be a dream come true, but we'll see. They're getting up there. But,
yeah. Having Nico here at the podcast would be pretty awesome.
Yeah, 86-year-old Nico hanging out. But yeah, everybody out there, if you're a Maiden fan and you listen to Iron Maiden, and even if you're not, and you want to get into Maiden, please feel free to give us a listen, give us a shout out. And just like, Up the Irons, you're part of the Maiden family, we're going to listen to you. And if you're not, we hope you give us a listen, give Maiden a listen, just immerse yourself in what they have to offer. And that's all we're asking too. So everybody take care of yourselves and take care of each other, and up the irons. And again, before we go, I'm Joe Labriola.
I'm Matt Wagner.
And thanks for listening to A Matter of Life in Maiden, the podcast of the Beast. We'll see you guys next time.